My ex proposed again, saying her new fiancé didn't understand her like I did. I replied, "Let me think." Then I recorded her sentimental speech and sent it directly to her current fiancé. 24 hours later, her fiancé was publicly calling her out on social media. "You two-timing loser." I, 32M, never thought I'd see her again after 3 years. But there she was at the coffee shop where we used to meet every Sunday morning. The same corner table by the window, the same nervous habit of twirling her engagement ring around her finger. Except this time, it wasn't the ring I'd given her. My heart did something stupid when I saw her face light up with that familiar smile. 3 years of therapy, dating other women, and building a new life, and my chest still tightened like I was 22 again. She waved me over like we were old friends who'd simply lost touch. I should have walked away. Instead, I found myself sliding into the seat across from her, the same seat where she'd broken up with me and left me questioning everything I thought I knew about love. She looked good, better than I remembered, actually. Her hair was shorter, more professional, and she carried herself with a confidence that hadn't been there before. She asked about my job, my family, my life, as if we were catching up after a pleasant separation instead of the nuclear fallout that had ended our 4-year relationship. I told her about my promotion at the marketing firm, about moving to the better apartment downtown. She seemed genuinely happy for me, nodding enthusiastically and asking follow-up questions that made me remember why I'd fallen for her in the first place. Then she mentioned her fiancé. "A lawyer," she said, "someone stable and ambitious who understood her career goals." They'd been together for 2 years, engaged for 6 months. The wedding was planned for next spring. I congratulated her, though the words felt like sandpaper in my throat. She thanked me and said it meant a lot coming from me, that she'd always valued my opinion above everyone else's. We talked for another hour about safe topics, mutual friends, changes in the neighborhood, movies we'd seen. When she finally said she had to go, I thought that would be it. A pleasant closure to an old chapter. But then she hesitated at the door and asked if I'd like to grab dinner sometime. As friends, she clarified quickly. She missed talking to someone who really understood her. I told her I'd think about it, though every rational part of my brain was screaming warnings. Update 1. She texted me 3 days later. A casual message asking if I'd decided about dinner, followed by a photo of our old favorite restaurant with the caption, "Remember this place?" I stared at that photo for 20 minutes. We'd celebrated my first promotion there. She'd cried there when her father got sick. We'd talked about marriage there, mapping out our future with the naive certainty of people who think love conquers everything. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. The restaurant looked exactly the same. Same dim lighting, same jazz music, same booth where we used to sit for hours. She'd arrived early and was already seated, looking nervous in a way that reminded me of our first date. Dinner started innocently enough. We talked about work, about how the city had changed, about anything except the obvious elephant in the room. But as the wine flowed and the familiar comfort settled in, the conversation grew more personal. She told me about her fiancé's long hours, how he was always stressed about cases and rarely had time for the little things she cared about. He didn't remember that she liked to watch old movies on Sunday afternoons, or that she got anxious in crowds and needed someone to hold her hand at parties. I found myself nodding along, remembering all the small details about her that I'd cataloged over 4 years together. The way she hummed when she cooked, how she needed exactly 8 minutes to get ready in the morning, her irrational fear of butterflies that she'd never told anyone else about. She noticed me remembering and smiled in that way that used to make me forget my own name. She reached across the table and touched my hand, just briefly, but long enough for me to feel the familiar spark. That's when she said it. That her fiancé was a good man, but he didn't understand her the way I did. That sometimes she lay awake at night wondering if she was making a mistake. That seeing me again had stirred up feelings she thought she'd buried. I pulled my hand back and reminded her that she was engaged. She nodded and apologized, said she didn't know what had gotten into her. But I could see it in her eyes, the same look she used to get when she wanted something but was too afraid to ask directly. Update 2. She called me 2 weeks later, crying. Her fiancé had to cancel their weekend getaway for a work emergency, and she was devastated. Not because of the canceled trip, but because it felt like a pattern. He always chose work over her, just like her father had chosen work over her mother. I met her at a park near her apartment. She looked smaller somehow, curled up on the bench with her knees drawn to her chest. I sat beside her and listened as she poured out her frustrations about feeling like she was in the relationship alone. She talked about how her fiancé never asked about her day unless it related to something he needed. How he'd forgotten her birthday last month and tried to make up for it with an expensive necklace ordered by his assistant. How he'd proposed at a work dinner in front of his colleagues instead of somewhere meaningful to them. I found myself getting angry on her behalf, which was stupid because I'd heard variations of these complaints about me during our breakup. But sitting there, watching her cry, I felt protective of her in a way that caught me off guard. She leaned against my shoulder and thanked me for listening. She said I was the only person who really saw her, who understood what she needed. Then she looked up at me with those eyes that had always been my weakness and said she'd made a mistake letting me go. Before I could respond, she kissed me. For a moment, I was 28 again, and she was the center of my universe. But then reality crashed back, and I pulled away. I reminded her that she was engaged, that she was planning to marry someone else in 6 months. She grabbed my hands and said she knew it was complicated, but she couldn't stop thinking about me. That maybe they could call off the engagement, maybe we could try again. We were older now, more mature. We could make it work this time. I told her I needed time to think. Update 3. She showed up at my apartment 3 days later with takeout from our old favorite Thai place. She'd let herself into the building by following another tenant, something that would have annoyed me with anyone else but felt familiar with her. I should have sent her away immediately. Instead, I let her in. We ate dinner on my couch, falling back into old rhythms like muscle memory. She complimented the changes I'd made to the place, running her fingers along the new bookshelf I'd built. She seemed genuinely impressed by the life I'd constructed without her. After we finished eating, she curled up against me while we watched a movie. It felt so natural, so right, that I almost forgot about the engagement ring she'd slipped into her purse before coming over. That's when she started talking about our past. How happy we'd been before things got complicated. How she'd been too young and scared to appreciate what we had. How she'd spent the last 3 years comparing every man to me and finding them lacking. She turned to face me and said she'd been thinking about my suggestion to take time. She'd realized that she didn't need time. She needed me. Her fiancé was a good man, but good wasn't enough anymore. She wanted the love we'd had, the understanding, the connection that made everything else irrelevant. She said she was ready to break up with him, to call off the wedding, to build something real with me. All I had to do was say yes. I looked at her sitting there on my couch, beautiful and earnest, and offering me everything I'd wanted 3 years ago. The smart thing would have been to say no, to protect myself from getting hurt again. But I'd never been smart when it came to her. That's when I made my decision. I told her to give me her full pitch. If we were going to do this, if we were going to destroy someone else's life and restart our own, I wanted to hear everything she had to say. Every reason why we belonged together, every promise about how it would be different this time. She lit up like I'd just agreed to marry her on the spot. She launched into this passionate speech about destiny and second chances and how some people are just meant to be together no matter what obstacles life puts in their way. She talked about how her fiancé was safe but boring, how he treated her like a trophy instead of a partner, how I challenged her and supported her dreams and made her feel alive in ways no one else could. She said she'd been sleepwalking through her engagement, going through the motions because it was what everyone expected, but seeing me again had woken her up. She promised that things would be different if we tried again. We were both more mature now, more aware of what we wanted. We wouldn't make the same mistakes that broke us up before. We'd communicate better, prioritize each other, build something lasting. She painted this beautiful picture of our future together, traveling to places we'd always talked about visiting, having the deep conversations that kept us up until dawn, supporting each other's dreams instead of competing with them. She made it sound like a fairy tale, like all we had to do was choose each other and everything else would fall into place. I listened to every word, nodding in the right places, asking questions that encouraged her to elaborate. She talked for almost an hour, pouring her heart out about how much she loved me and how sorry she was for ever letting me go. When she finally finished, breathless and glowing with hope, I told her it sounded amazing, that I needed just a day to wrap my head around everything and figure out the logistics of ending my current relationship and helping her navigate breaking up with her fiancé. She practically bounced off the couch with excitement. She kissed me again, longer this time, and whispered that she knew I'd understand. that this was meant to be. After she left, I sat on my couch for a long time, thinking about the woman I'd just listened to. The same woman who'd broken up with me 3 years ago because she felt trapped and needed space to grow. The same woman who'd told me that I was too intense, too needy, too focused on our relationship instead of my own goals. The same woman who was now ready to blow up her engagement because the grass looked greener with her ex. I pulled out my phone and looked at the recording I'd made of her entire speech. Update 4. Finding her fiancé's contact information took less than 10 minutes. She'd mentioned his law firm during our coffee shop reunion, and his LinkedIn profile had his full name and work email. A quick social media search revealed his personal accounts. I spent the next few hours crafting the perfect message. Nothing dramatic or vindictive, just a concerned heads-up from someone who thought he deserved to know what kind of person he was planning to marry. I attached the audio file of her speech and included a brief explanation of our history and her recent attempts to rekindle our relationship. I mentioned that she'd been meeting with me behind his back for weeks and had just spent the evening at my apartment planning their breakup. I kept the tone respectful but factual. I wasn't trying to destroy her out of spite. I was trying to save him from making the same mistake I'd made years ago. Before sending it, I listened to the recording one more time. Her voice was so earnest as she talked about destiny and second chances. So convincing as she painted our future together. So manipulative as she tore down the man she'd promised to marry. I thought about the version of this story where I said yes to her proposal, where we got back together, and I spent the next few years wondering when she'd get bored again and start looking for her next upgrade. Where her fiancé found out about our affair months later and had his heart broken right before his wedding. I hit send. His response came back within an hour. Short and professional, thanking me for the information and asking me not to contact either of them again. I respected his request and deleted both their numbers from my phone. The next morning, I woke up to a series of missed calls and increasingly frantic voicemails from her. She'd started out confused, asking why I wasn't answering her calls about planning our future. By the final message, she was crying and begging me to call her back, saying something terrible had happened with her fiancé. I didn't call back. Update 5. The social media explosion happened exactly 24 hours after I'd sent the recording. Her fiancé had apparently spent that time processing the betrayal and deciding how to respond. His post was a masterpiece of controlled fury. He didn't mention her name, but he didn't need to. Anyone who knew them would recognize the situation immediately. He wrote about discovering that his fiancée had been emotionally cheating for weeks with her ex-boyfriend, about how she'd been planning to break up with him while still wearing his ring and living in the apartment he paid for, about how she'd recorded herself explaining in detail why her ex was superior to him in every way that mattered. He called her a two-timing loser who'd wasted 2 years of his life while keeping her real feelings hidden. He thanked the friend who'd had the courage to show him who he was really engaged to before he made the biggest mistake of his life. The post went viral within hours. Her friends and family started commenting, asking what had happened. His friends rallied around him with support. Mutual acquaintances began choosing sides. She tried to control the narrative with her own post, claiming that the recording had been taken out of context and that her ex was a stalker who couldn't accept their breakup. But the damage was already done. Too many people had heard the audio file, and her explanation didn't match what they'd witnessed. Her sister called her out publicly for hurting a good man who'd done nothing but love her. Her best friend unfriended her after posting about loyalty and respect. Even her own mother commented that she was disappointed and hoped she'd learn from this experience. Within a week, she'd gone from being half of a beloved couple planning their dream wedding to being the cautionary tale everyone whispered about at parties. Final update. 3 months later, I ran into her ex-fiancé at a bookstore downtown. He recognized me immediately and approached with a handshake and a genuine smile. He thanked me again for the heads up, saying it had been the hardest but best thing that had ever happened to him. He'd dodged a bullet that could have destroyed him financially and emotionally if he'd discovered her true character after marriage. He told me that she'd tried to reconcile with him multiple times in the weeks following the blow-up, claiming that her feelings for me had just been temporary confusion brought on by wedding stress. She'd promised to cut all contact with me and commit fully to their relationship if he'd give her another chance. He'd refused. Once trust was broken, he couldn't see a path back to the partnership he thought they'd had. He'd realized that her ability to compartmentalize her betrayal while planning their wedding showed a level of deception he couldn't live with. He was dating someone new now, someone he'd met through mutual friends who'd rallied around him during the breakup. She was kind and honest and didn't have any ex-boyfriends lurking in her past waiting to reclaim her. As for her, he'd heard through mutual friends that she'd moved back home with her parents after losing several friendships and facing judgment from their social circle. She tried reaching out to me multiple times through various channels, but I'd blocked her everywhere and changed my number. I never responded to any of her attempts at contact. The woman I'd fallen in love with 4 years ago was gone, if she'd ever really existed at all. What remained was someone who viewed relationships as transactions and loyalty as conditional on finding someone better. Recording her speech wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. Her fiancé deserved to know who he was marrying, just like I deserved to know who I was considering taking back. The recording simply revealed what was already there beneath the surface. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is show them who they're dealing with before it's too late to walk away. Her ex-fiancé got that chance because I gave him the information he needed to make an informed decision. As for me, I learned that some chapters of your life are meant to stay closed. The woman who'd broken my heart 3 years ago hadn't changed. She'd just gotten better at hiding her true motivations until she found a reason to reveal them. I deleted the recording and moved on with my life, grateful that I'd chosen truth over the beautiful lie she'd been selling. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be anyone's backup plan.